In this video, we're going to talk about the 3 zoom lenses that every photographer needs. Let's jump right into it. Welcome back to Run and Gun. I'm JT. Thank you so much for joining me today. And let's talk about our first lens in our trifecta of lenses that I think every photographer should have in their camera bag. And that first zoom lens is a wide zoom. Now this one happens to be a Nikon 14-24. It's an f2.8, so it's pretty fast. Canon also makes a 16-35, which is a very close competitor or kind of an equivalent of this 14-24. Wide-angle lenses are all about establishing the scene. Show your audience where the rest of the story is going to take place. Wide zooms are great for giving us that holistic context. And if you can pick up one of those zooms that lets in a whole bunch of light, that's going to be able to create some awesome photographs. I'd recommend something a little wider than 20 millimeters for the wide end, and for the long end of that wide angle lens, somewhere between 24 and 30-ish millimeters. That's a fairly good range. The second lens on our list of zoom lenses that I think every photographer needs is going to be a medium lens or a normal lens. This one in my hand happens to be a Nikon 24-70, a very common lens. Canon has the equivalent of 24-70. There's also 24-105, everything in that kind of middle range that you can open up a little bit and also zoom in for some nice portraits. Now, most photographers refer to this lens as the workhorse lens. On a typical photo shoot, you're probably going to have this lens on your camera for about 75% of the time. For example, if you're shooting a wedding, this is going to be able to get you most of your wider shots and your close-ups. It's just extremely versatile, and if I'm shooting on 2 different camera bodies, you can guarantee this is going to be one of my go-to lenses. Now, these workhorse 24-70 lenses are typically a little bit of a step up from your kit lens, or the lens that comes in the box with your camera. Those lenses typically aren't as fast, usually f4, f5.6, and the quality isn't as great because they're a little bit cheaper. They're meant for beginners. Now this again is going to be a step up. At f2.8, I can get a little bit better low light performance out of this lens, but it is going to cost just a little bit more. But that cost is going to be 100% worth it when you have one of these workhorse lenses. Last but certainly not least is going to be our long zoom. Now this is a 70-200. This is one of my favorite lenses all around for portraits, for all sorts of things. With this lens, we like to say you can really reach out and touch someone very far away. You can photograph birds, you can photograph great portraits, things on the horizon, in the distance. There's all sorts of great things you can do, especially if you have a 2.8 version of this lens. Now, the f4 version, not as expensive, but again, the f2.8, you can shoot in lower light scenarios. You can really crank your shutter speed for sports, which is another thing this lens is fantastic for. You really, again, can reach out and photograph someone that is all the way on the other side of the room without being obtrusive. Time when that comes in handy is street photography, with weddings, and when you have some portrait shoots to do, you can really zoom in and compress that background and that foreground, get that very shallow depth of field, and take some very beautiful portraits with some great smooth bokeh in the background. The 70-200 is fairly common across all camera brands. Nikon has them, Canon has them, all sorts of other camera brands have them, or they have an equivalent, for example, Micro Four Thirds, but this is an absolutely fantastic portrait lens. It's just about as versatile as the 24-70. I'll use it a little bit less in scenarios like weddings, but for street photography, this is one of my go-to lenses. Again, I can step back a little bit and have some gorgeous depth of field. So I hope you enjoyed this video about the 3 zoom lenses every photographer should have in their camera bag. I call them the lens trifecta. We'll have another video coming up very soon about the 3 primes that every photographer should have as well. And we'll also come up with some other videos about what exactly is in my camera bag. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe down below. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well, because YouTube doesn't like to share videos as much. So if you want to be sure to catch every single video as soon as I release it. Hit that notification bell. That's all for this video, and until next time, get out and go shoot.